There was no walk-up music. I was walking up in silence, and everyone's sitting so far away from us. Okay, hey everyone. So I'm Jeremy Borger. This is my first post-COVID conference, and so I had to pull out this coat from the closet. I am happy that it still fits. So I have been in the digital marketing agency world for about 14 years now, with paid search, social, programmatic, CTV. In my current role, I oversee the paid search practice at Code3. Code3 is a digital marketing agency. The 3 stands for media, creative, and commerce. So the media portion is where my team lives, paid search, along with programmatic and social. And then the creative team, we have a full creative team that does everything from full motion video to brand guidelines and other things that I'm not really that directly involved in. And then commerce. Our commerce team helps brands with their presence on marketplaces like Amazon, Walmart, Target, but mostly Amazon. But enough about me. You are here to listen more to Meg from Bolt. So Meg, why don't you give a little bit about your background?
Sure. I also have about...
Are we on?
Great. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm Meg. I also have about 15 years experience in marketing. I lived in New York for about a decade before moving out to the Bay and worked in all the typical agencies there. And then I moved to SF about 9 years ago and started at the San Francisco Chronicle, which is a super strange place to do marketing because they have no money. But I'm really good at doing things with no money now. And then I went back agency side, and then I went to SoFi. When I joined SoFi, no one had ever heard of SoFi, including me, and built that brand from scratch, which was super fun to grow it from nothing to the second most beloved brand in financial services. From there, I went to StubHub, which was super, super fun because I love live events. And then COVID happened and no one went to live events. And that was a very trying time. From there, I went to a small fintech company called Tally that helps Americans get out of credit card debt faster and save money, which is a super big problem because the American dream is actually very unreachable for most people. And now I'm at Bolt, and if you haven't heard of Bolt, that's okay because a lot of people haven't. We're a company that helps e-commerce companies improve their checkout experience, drive better conversion, decrease fraud, all kinds of things like that. So it's my first time on the B2B side. We're building a consumer brand and product as well, but I really love getting to work with different e-commerce brands, having done a ton of e-commerce work myself, and help them grow their business, improve their customer experience, things like that.
Okay, great. So the name of this session is How to Break into and Effectively Scale CTV. So let's start off with describing what CTV is.
Right. So we were talking about the difference between CTV and OTT, right? CTV is a connected TV. It's a TV that's connected to your internet. And OTT is any over-the-top video experience. So that's often played through a CTV. That also can be on desktop devices, mobile. You guys all know the drill.
I think OTT is the worst acronym in marketing today.
It is very confusing. It's
over the top, what? No one knows what that means.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how about talking about some of the success that you've had with CTV in your past?
Yeah, so I started in CTV really, really early, when it was coming about. My first experience was when I was at SoFi, and we did addressable TV with what was then referred to, I think it was part of AT&T, and then it was Xandr, and it's had 5,000 different names and permutations. But for us, it was really great to be able to actually go after an addressable audience and have a one-to-one measurement of the efficacy of the platform, and then actually use that to inform not only our linear strategy, but then also inform our OTT strategy as well. So that was super effective. From there, I went to StubHub, where we did a lot more measurement, and we can talk later about incrementality. I think someone yesterday said if they heard incrementality one more time, their head was going to explode.
I'm looking forward to someone's head exploding.
Person. Yeah. I live and die by incrementality, so I think it's the best thing ever, and I have lots of feelings about it that are mostly positive. And then from there I went to Tally, and I think Nick was talking about how when IDFA went away last year, the whole world for all marketers died. And the company that I was working at, Tally, we lived by Facebook alone. It was 85% of our marketing mix. And overnight, our CAC went 300% through the roof. It was awful. So I had to diversify our channel mix, and OTT and actually work with Bliss Point Media was our absolute savior. They had never done TV before, and thankfully I'd made quite a few TV commercials in my career, so I knew how to do it fast and cheap. I took it from a channel they'd never done to $2 million a month in 4 months and grew it to our biggest and most efficient channel. And now I think they're spending like $6 million a month. And for a company of that size, that's huge. And I can't speak more highly of Bliss Point, like amazing partners. And we can talk more about like Remnant and the pros and cons of that. But that was really awesome. And now at Bolt, we work with Mountain, MNTN, which is an amazing partner. And one of the things that makes them there's many things that make them great. One of the things I love most as a brand marketer is they own Maximum Effort, which is Ryan Reynolds' creative agency. You may remember them from sort of like the shot heard around the world last year when the Sex and the City show and Just Like That came out, and Big died on the Peloton. And then they had to come out with an ad with Chris Noth, and they did it in like 5 days. And that's their whole, Maximum Effort's whole thing is fast advertising. They call it fast advertising. So they offer what they call creative as a subscription. So if you spend a certain amount of money with them, they give you ads for free. So they made us an ad with Sarah McLachlan in 10 days. And in a 2-week period, we had over 2 billion impressions in media from the TV, but also then, of course, like tons of media coverage. So I can talk a lot more about that. And they have really great audience segments. And so from a B2B standpoint, I have like a really specific group of people that I'm going after. And because I'm able to do that kind of very niche targeting with Mountain, it's a much more efficacious channel than like just trying to go and buy like Hulu or any of those other platforms.
Speaking of Ryan Reynolds, a stranger on the street once told me that I look like Ryan Reynolds.
I mean, you're a spitting image.
No, I'm going to hold on to that, though, first. Anyway, moving on. So we talk a lot in marketing about the conversion funnel, and I think Sarah, where are you? She even talked about her disdain for the word funnel, but everyone knows what it is, so we'll continue to use it. But awareness, consideration, remarketing, conversion. Where do you think CTV fits into that funnel?
I think it can sit anywhere you want it to. So I'm a brand marketer. I've used it for brand over and over again. I think because the measurement is so strong, and so from my point of view, it's not a walled garden, right? You're able to look at the impact of the channel on its own, and then also how it works with all the other channels. I think Nick again was mentioning before, like how Bliss Point basically has like an MMM, and I actually was introduced to Bliss Point through my incrementality measurement partner called Measured. And what I loved about it was we were able to see how TV impacted all of our other channels. And then of course, like when I was at Tally, we used it as a pure DR channel. And that worked really, really well, and we were able to scale it, and the team there is still scaling it. And at Bolt, we're using it both for top of funnel as well as for acquisition. But I think what I really love about it, again, is like someone who I lead creative, TV is like a true storytelling medium, right? You can actually do your real brand work, showing up as you want to, telling your story, and you can still do it in a DR fashion. And I am personally not a believer that you have to run those Wonder Mop horrible ads that are like black and white, like why won't this mop work? You can do really creative, wonderful storytelling that shows your audience like how they relate to you and how you relate to them, and still do it in a way that drives your business and gets like efficient growth.
Does the creative change depending on where in the funnel you're trying to target? Yeah,
absolutely. You can do more storytelling and have a lighter CTA if you're doing more top of funnel, and then of course you want to make sure. For me, I'm if I'm doing DR work, and I work in tech and fintech, so I'm always showing the product, right, showing the end result, and making sure there's a super clear CTA, right, the URL on the screen, things like that.
Breaking into CTV, let's say there's some people in our audience that are CTV curious, but they haven't gone down that path yet. What advice would you give someone for their company just starting out in CTV? Yeah,
I think one of the other really great things about Mountain, apart from the fact that they will make the creative for you for free, is that you can start with as little as $500 on their platform. I think for me when I was at Tally, we have fintech has a really high cost per acquisition, in the hundreds of dollars. So we worked with BlissPoint. So I'd say work with the provider and understand like what does initial success look like? What sort of the worst case scenario that's tenable for you and that you can work through. So when we were started with BlissPoint, we said, okay, we're going to spend $100,000 over a 4-week period. Again, we had like a multiple $100 CAC. And we goaled ourselves on the top of the funnel, because in fintech, oftentimes your funnel is very, very long and there's many steps. Like our conversion rate from the top of the funnel to the bottom was in the single digits. And that was like fine for the industry. Many other industries said it's not fine at all. So we started with, here's our goal, cost per account created, and we needed to be like within this range. We hit that, and then over the next 8 weeks, we worked down the funnel. And we had different, because with these different OTT and CTV partners, you can have different events you're optimizing for, just like on Facebook or any other platform. So we worked our way down the funnel, and we're able to get to the bottom of the funnel and reach our goal for CAC, and then continue to scale from there. So I think like start with the top, work your way down, and just have like know that the machine gets smarter and your work gets better. And so you just give yourself like that freedom and set clear expectations with your stakeholders. Because if you say like, hey, I'm going to hit my CAC goals in the first month, like there's 0 chance of that actually happening. So be really realistic, and then you'll get there.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about creative. I mean, in my current role, I feel a little bit spoiled because Google is still sticking with text ads for paid search. So I see other parts of my company like struggling with creative messaging, and I say, haha, we just have to type a couple headlines and descriptions. But so what tips do you have for effective creative, how to get that developed? They talked a lot in the last session about, user-generated content, and it's not as important to be as polished as it used to be. So what tips do you have from creative effectiveness?
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally agree. I actually made a Super Bowl commercial once that was entirely UGC, and it was like one of our best performing spots when I was at SoFi. Yeah, I think that you can definitely have a lot of freedom, like whatever is going to break through. And we even see like really big brands like Verizon and all these other Fortune 100 brands like using vertical video like from TikTok in their ads. So I think there's a lot of flexibility there. You don't have to do highly produced stuff. Definitely working with someone who's done it before. Don't try to just make your TV ad on your own if you haven't before. Like find a creative consultant, work with someone like Maximum Effort who will do it for free. But there's lots of things that are really important to understand about, putting how you treat the end cards and stuff like that. So that is really important to work with an expert on that, because you can't just take a Facebook ad or a TikTok ad and put it onto your TV spot.
Okay, here's where someone's head's going to explode. How do you measure success of a CTV campaign?
Yeah. I mean, there is like the ability to do the one-to-one attribution, right? The attribution window is different. For Facebook, right, it's usually like a 1 day view, 1 day click, 7 day view. And for TV, a lot of times it's like a 30-day attribution window. But what I really love about these platforms is they don't double count. Like the walled gardens double count. No offense to paid search.
None taken.
They are taking credit for all the other demand that's being generated from all the other channels. And OTT and CTV often will allow Facebook and Google and all those other platforms to take credit, and then they take up the remainder of the credit for anyone who's been exposed on an IP address level. So I think that is really awesome. For me, I look at all of this in incrementality, right? Because there's especially again, I've been in fintech for a long time. Fintech are highly, highly considered products. There is 0 chance that anyone sees your ad once and immediately takes your product, especially if you're a fintech brand that no one has heard of, which is the majority of companies that I started working at and then grew them into brands people had actually heard of. So I think incrementality is super, super important, as I've said. I also would, if you haven't done incrementality measurement in the past, do not try to do it in-house unless you work at a giant telco and then they all build it in-house and they all know what they're doing. There are many, many tools and platforms that have all the systems set up. They can automate tests for you. They can run tests manually. They can help you with your media mix and what kind of tests you should be running. It's so very difficult to teach an analyst how to do it, and unless you are an analyst yourself, and it's just really, really cumbersome, and I can't like recommend enough. And they're not expensive. Like I worked with Measured, and I think it was like $10,000 a month, and they did all of our measurement across all of our channels, and we were spending, again, millions of dollars a month. So I think it's money well spent because you actually know where to invest your next dollar most efficiently. And the other piece that I really loved about the partner that I worked with at Tally was not only were we looking at incrementality analysis of our channels and how they work together, we were actually looking at where we should spend our next dollar, as I mentioned before. So we were looking at which channels were actually going to yield the best return and where we were seeing diminishing returns, which is super important because as often as you scale with some channels, you reach that point where the next dollar is actually going to get you 50% more benefit than the dollar before that. And so you need to realize where that cliff is so you don't hit a problem, which is what they had before I joined Tally, where they couldn't scale the budget over $2 million a month. And so whenever they did that, the CAC would like go through the ceiling. So it's really important to understand that curve as well.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about inventory. So not all inventory on CTV is created equal. Let's talk specifically about remnant inventory. So this might be inventory that the publishers have that they haven't sold off directly. What are some of the positives and negatives of buying remnant inventory? Do you purchase remnant inventory?
Yeah, I feel like remnant inventory is like a really bad rep. It's like sort of like the sweater in the bottom of the bargain barrel. But I love remnant inventory because it is the cheapest inventory. And with working with a partner like a Bliss Point or a Mountain or whoever it is, they get, when I was buying OTT directly, when I was at SoFi, we were seeing anywhere from like a $12 to like a $30 CPM. When I was working with Bliss Point, on average, I would have like an $8 to a $9 CPM on like Hulu and all these other really like premium networks. So, that's how you win, is like you get the lowest cost and you get it in front of the right audience at that cost. So I think that it's really great as long as it works. If you're buying remnant inventory that isn't working, then that's just, you should not do that. But that's really great. What's great about the algos of all these OTT and CTV platforms is they're going to optimize to whatever's working the best. The challenge with remnant, and for those who haven't entered the OTT, CTV space, this is something that I learned the hard way, is at the end of the quarter, at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, and definitely at the end of the year, the inventory dries up. And so what you're planning to spend is no longer available to you because it's all being bought up with direct buys from the other bigger, brands who are willing to go direct and spend a premium. So what I would recommend for anyone who's trying to break into this is use all the platforms to figure out which audience clusters on which networks and which shows and all the other stuff that works for you. And then in advance of the end of the quarter and definitely at the end of the year, go and pay a premium to buy those top performing spots, and just know that at least you're going to have that inventory and plan for it. In Q4, we always see like a 20 to 30% increase in CPMs across all platforms. So you should be planning for that in general. But what you don't want to have happen is planning to have the same CPMs and the same inventory, and know not only are your CPMs increased, but you can't even buy the spots that you wanted before. So that was a really hard learning for me that I hope all of you don't have to make that mistake.
When Adam from the Trade Desk was up here, he had a great question that I'm now going to steal, and that is around, what are your thoughts about ads potentially coming to Netflix?
Oh, I'm excited. Not as a user. But I'm excited about it because I think you have a super captive audience. And I think Netflix obviously has done a lot of research on it, and there are people who don't want to pay or can't afford to pay for a Netflix subscription. So now they're going to have access to it. And that's awesome for them to be able to have wider distribution too. And of course for their shareholders.
And so I think that we couldn't go through a CTV session without me asking you, what are you streaming or binging lately on connected TV?
So I just did a 12-hour flight last week. So I did a lot. I really loved Bridgerton and all of that nonsense. So I'm watching The Gilded
Even
Age.
season 2? You think season 2 held up?
No, it was not as good.
Yeah,
The Duke wasn't there.
Yeah, where's the
It was
Duke?
just tragic. His ego got in the way. The Gilded Age, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I think the writing in that is so smart. I was watching Succession with my husband, but it just makes me so depressed watching people who are so awful sometimes.
I love Succession. Yeah.
It just gets me it's too dark for me sometimes. They're just so awful. But I did want to say one other thing, just not related to what I'm streaming, but Nick in the session before was talking about the difference between ROAS and LTV. And this relates to connected TV, but also relates to Bolt and like our offering. So I think also with connected TV, we're able to really tell the story. And what I've seen from a brand marketer perspective is like, and I saw this especially at StubHub with our brand marketing. Whenever you do brand marketing, people really understand more about like what you stand for and your value proposition and how you're differentiated. And often those customers will come back more frequently organically, and so they'll have a higher LTV and a lower CAC over the course of their lifetime. And so that's what I really love about CTV. And also working at Bolt as a marketer for that business and working with different merchants. It's super exciting too, because we allow you to know your customers a lot more, because we have much more customers logged in. Like I was just reading about one of our fashion brand we work with, and after turning Bolt on, they had a 400% increase in logged in users. So my whole like vision for what Bolt is doing is like we can actually help all these e-commerce brands move from the prison of a ROAS, which is like you're really just looking at today and tomorrow, to actually being able to build long-term growth, long-term relationships, and really thinking about your LTV to CAC model. Because ROAS is just like the drug that we can't get off, and that's where you get trapped in like these demand gen channels versus looking at channels like CTV and OTT that can actually help you like build your story, build understanding, comprehension, and preference.
That sweet, sweet ROAS drug.
I mean, it's the worst.
All right. I think we have some time for questions. So is there any questions in the audience for Meg regarding CTV or me and my resemblance to Ryan Reynolds?
What are your thoughts on fraud within the CTV space?
Fraud within the CTV space is the question.
Experienced it, or
I have not experienced a lot of it because when we worked with Bliss Point and also with Mountain, I can't remember what the name of the tool is, but they use a third-party tool to validate and ensure that there's no fraud. That was something that we had a lot of problems with when I was at SoFi, was fraudulent inventory, but I haven't experienced it with these partners. I think it is like about the partner you work with and making sure that they have those like third parties to validate the quality of the audience and the inventory.
Any other questions? Yep.
Thank you so much for all of your really actionable insights, especially when it comes to very specific breaking into CTV. And I find it so interesting that you have a background that really combines the best of both worlds between brand and direct response. But in your experience, how have you, when you needed to justify brand activity to CFOs, knowing that ROAS is such a critical metric when thinking about your marketing budgets, how are you positioning that to say, I need to actually grow and talk to customers who otherwise are not aware of our brand?
Yeah, that's. I can talk about my experience at StubHub. So when I started at StubHub is a 22-year-old company. I don't know if you remember their really awful but memorable ads with like the ticket oak, which is a big scary puppet mechanical tree that they ran for forever. And probably 5 or 6 years before I joined, they were never able to. They were never trying to measure that, and they were spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year on brand and had no idea how it was impacting their business. And at that point, they were the only game in town. So they were probably having a ton of waste and unnecessary spend. So they cut off all brand spend. At a very unfortunate coincidence was when the first competitors started coming into the space. And when I joined, the competition was so fierce, and there were so many new white labeled players coming into the space. We literally couldn't list all of them in a non-compete. And when I joined, I think 85%, again, no offense to you, 85% of the media mix was paid search, which
I mean, I didn't make Google. It's okay.
It's a wonder.
Yeah.
Like paid search really, really works. But if you are in a highly competitive marketplace business where your margin is so slim and the only thing you're doing is bidding on keywords for Giants tickets or Beyonce tickets, and you're being bid against by Vivid Seats and SeatGeek and Viagogo and all these other ones, like it's just a race to the bottom and your total margin is eroded. And we were not in a great place at all when I joined. And I felt a little bit shell-shocked when I joined because I did not realize what the state of the business was. And so they were like, hey, we don't know how to measure brand. We need to figure out how to do that because we want to invest in it, but we need to do it in a way that is basically bulletproof. So we built an incrementality measurement approach. And at first, the analyst who was assigned to work with me on it, I was super pissed because he was a product analyst. And I was like, I'm going to have to teach him everything. This is going to be, I'm totally like screwed from the beginning. And I very much regret those feelings because A, he's a wonderful person, and B, he actually helped us find an opportunity that I would have never had if I had not worked with a product analyst. At StubHub, our device breakdown between iOS and Android had been consistently 70% iOS, 30% Android for 3 years, like within 1 point. And so he said, hey, if we can run the entire brand campaign on iOS, we can do an incrementality lift and actually see what the ROAS is of that campaign. And to break even for StubHub's business, we had to have a 4 ROAS. Our performance marketing was anywhere from like a 7 to a 10. And they said, okay, you have $5 million and 12 weeks to get a 4 ROAS, like good luck, God bless, fingers crossed for you. And I had a really amazing team and really exceptional creative, and we were very agile, and the measurement team was working with us every day and all that, and we were actually able to hit 5.5 ROAS in 6 weeks. And so we took our budget from $5 million in 2019 to $55 million in 2020, again, all pre-COVID, but that was how we justified it, and then we continued to do this incrementality testing on all these new channels, and we said as long as we hit a 4 ROAS, and we were looking at things in aggregate, then we can continue to expand and spend more. So that's why I love incrementality, because I think you shouldn't goal brand on a ROAS, but you need to start somewhere and at least breaking even and then earning more trust and runway to show hey, these customers, what we saw, not only was there a 5.5 ROAS, we had these customers were, there was a 10% lift in app downloads, which is already a 50% higher LTV than a customer who just went to web. So there was all these other benefits that showed them that these customers were going to be more value in the long term. And again, why it allowed us to move away from ROAS into an LTV to CAC basis. That's the end of my TED Talk.
When Sarah starts walking up, that's like when they start playing the music at the Oscars. I got to wrap things up. So, Meg Ciarallo, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.